members of members of the executive, members of the legislature, Badudi ba Gauteng ke a le dumedisa. Madam Speaker, I will say to the Premier what I said 3 years ago. We can stand here and I can stand here and we can insult each other, we can exchange insults. But that is not going to take us anywhere. And I've said this to you before, that whenever there is solutions that are put on the table, let's not wait and oppose them just because there seems to be coming from the opposition benches. If there are things that are operational and that can actually then work, let's then implement them. That is the first thing that I want to then say to you as an opening statement. But I think it is also important, Madam Speaker, to then say the insults that we can exchange is not going to change the fortunes of the residents of Makaus. The insults that we can exchange is not going to change the fortunes of the people of Tshepisong, of Sebokeng, of Montrose, of Hammanskraal, of Fortsburg right here, of Lodium, who are now, observing Ramadan and need water and cannot even do iftar, as it's called, when they need to then wash up. You and me arguing is not going to assist in ensuring that there's taps that are not running dry, that the victims of GBV are going to get the kind of assistance that they need, that those millions of residents of South Africa and the thousands in Gauteng that find themselves not knowing where their next meal is going to come from, that is not going to assist us. And I'm saying this with all sincerity, Premier, because the more we argue in here and talk about things that, we want to then show who's the cleverest of them all, the more things are falling apart outside. But at the same time, I must say, Premier, when you apologize, it is also important that what follows after that apology is a sincere attempt to then address the issues that then follows. And I want to make this plea to you, that when we talk about the infrastructure and this is where I want to then start, when we talk about the infrastructure in Gauteng, I've said this to you before, and I'll repeat it. The infrastructure in municipalities is not going to fix itself, and municipalities in Gauteng, none of them have the capability or the budget to be able to then deal with the issues of infrastructure. That I can give you as something that you can take free of charge. If you go into Johannesburg, Johannesburg needs about 200 billion as a start. Not even building new infrastructure, taking care of the backlog that they are sitting with. Tshwane, the same thing. Ekurhuleni, the same thing. I'm not even going to talk about Emfuleni because you know the disaster that is there. Now, when we talk about dealing with infrastructure going forward, introducing a new entity that is, supposedly supposed to then be replacing GIFA is not the solution. The solution is to then say, how do we, from a provincial perspective, bring all the mayors, bring all the city managers, bring all the MMCs that are responsible for infrastructure, and then say, how do we put together an infrastructure master plan and budget for it? How do we then fund it? How long is it going to take? How do we then measure the milestones in terms of the rollout thereof? That is what you need. To tell the residents that they must start using water sparingly, while we know that, Vaal River system, as an example, has over 105% full capacity at this point in time, is not the solution. What we now need to then say is that the water between rainwater and municipalities, 40% plus that we're losing needs to be addressed and needs to be addressed as a matter of agency. To then say rainwater must pump more water into reservoirs, that is still not the solution. The solution is to make sure that we are dealing with the infrastructure that is being allowed to decay for years and years. I can tell you right now, drive into the northern suburbs of Johannesburg. The old asbestos pipes that have been there continue to be there. That is not helping. Go to Lodium. The fact that the reservoir that is lying on the mountain there cannot get enough water makes Kobolisi that is lying Ko Attridgeville on the other side not to have water, and the residents of Lodium and the residents of Kosaminteng, Lokoskreping, not to have water. I can talk about what is happening in certain parts of Johannesburg. Until such time as we come around the table and then say, here's the infrastructure master plan, municipalities, you will not be able to then deal with these things on your own. How do we then put a plan together? That's the only only way that you're going to be able to then deal with these things. And I'm still offering that to you. Here's an engineer, here's somebody who's been able to then meet with people that have actually then worked around the plan. And these are the people that can give you some advice in terms of what needs to be done. We're not politicking here. You say you want solutions, we're offering those to you. I'm saying to you, Premier, you speak about day zero. You speak about day zero that, Western Cape was facing. And you say that, you didn't politic. You couldn't politic because there was clear plan in terms of how we then dealing with it. I'm saying to you, you will not get criticism if the people understand what is the clear plan of how you deal with these issues going forward. By the way, the day zero in Cape Town or in the Western Cape was not man-made. It was because you had the river systems, the dams that were running below 15%. Right now, the difference is that in Gauteng, you have river system and dams that shouldn't actually be running low. That is the difference. And there was a 21 steps that the Western Cape clearly communicated. Communicate what are the steps to then address these things, and then say how you are then ensuring and then showing the people each and every step and the success thereof. I promise you will not have more people that are protesting looking for water. You're not going to have people then frustrated and saying we don't know what government is doing. But until such time as you tackle the issues of water tankers, you're not going to get to the bottom of what is happening right now, Premier. I can give you an example that we have seen this, that when you have the water treatment, the timber treatment plant being fixed. You have it then being vandalized the very next day when it's supposed to be pumping water to the residents of Hammanskraal. Why? Because there are people who are benefiting in taking tankers to Hammanskraal, and it's now costing $1 billion per municipality, the metros. Now you can imagine, where is that money coming from? It means that there are certain services that are not being delivered, where money is then being abstracted, so that money is then being made available for these water tankers. This is what we now need to then be dealing with. Even in informal settlements, when we talk about rudimentary or basic services in informal settlements, it cannot be that we're still talking about JoJo tanks. Yes, we can talk about how do we then have centralized taps in informal settlements. That means that you are able to then calculate how much water is going into those communities. You can then actually then meter that amount of water that is going there. But you can then have people getting clean drinking water instead of having JoJo tanks that we don't know what is lying in those JoJo tanks. We have seen a situation, for instance, in Pretoria West, where out of the JoJo tanks, cats were being pulled out because people were then saying the smells that is coming out of water that they're getting, that there were maggots that were coming out of the water that they were getting. These, Premier, are things that we're going to need to then address as a matter of agency going forward. You gave an example, and I think this, you were taking a cheap punch at the DA, and then you then say, no, Microsoft decided to then come to Gauteng instead of the Western Cape. Well, that's the mistake that you made, because Microsoft started in the Western Cape, and Amazon is there as well. You talk about Google is there, IBM, Terraco, and so many that started there. And they started there not because, the Western Cape seems to have the better weather or anything like that. They started there because there was a clear plan in terms of how we deal with infrastructure. Deal with the issues of infrastructure, deal with the issues of how you deal with water, electricity, how you deal with the issues of roads, how you deal with the issues of safety and security for the infrastructure that people want to then invest in. You do that, you will be able to then attract more than Microsoft that is willing to then come and invest here. You then make an example about, and I want, before I move on from the issue of the infrastructure, we visited, and Tate Funzi will back me up on this, and even the MEC, the chairperson, Tate Mzi Kumal, will back me up on this. When we went to Mirafong, we asked a simple question. I specifically asked a question. What infrastructure blueprint do you have? How old is it? How do we know when to fix it? Do you know what was the response from the municipal manager? We don't have a blueprint of the infrastructure that we have here. So if you don't know what you have, how do you know what is broken or is about to be broken? How do you know how to maintain it? How do you know how to budget for it going forward? And this is just not what is happening in Mirafong. It's something that is happening throughout our municipalities and throughout the province. And this is something that will need to be addressed as a matter of agency if you want to then make progress in this particular instance. Also, I want to then say to you, Premier, you promised the people of Gauteng 18 private hospitals that were going to be converted. What happened to that? The people are still waiting for those hospitals. And unfortunately, You know, the statements that were made, and I don't want to repeat those statements about people sleeping on the floors and enjoying sleeping on the floors. I don't want to be talking about, you know, the issues of the showers and all of that. But here's the thing. We need to be very careful of what we say to our public, because the public are really teetering right now on the brink of total explosion, and it's not going to be nice for those that are in government, but unfortunately it's going to affect everybody else, not only those that are in government. So I'm giving you a friendly warning, Premier, and to your executive. Let us be very careful of the statements that we make out there. Let us be careful not to sound like we are tone deaf and we cannot hear the plight of the people that are out there. But I think you also owe the people of Gauteng and the whole world that could misinterpret or be misinformed by what you said. HIV and AIDS doesn't have any vaccine. Lenacapavir is not a vaccine, but it's a PrEP. I saw my Leonard friend there getting excited, thinking, now because of there's a cure. The problem is that that is not a vaccine and can never be regarded as a vaccine. And I think you must address that. You must set the record straight. It is not a vaccine, but it is, you know, a PrEP that actually can be used to then ensure that you can look at it. It's there. It's there. It's actually, if you go and look at it, it's something that is called Yezetiko and Sulenka. This is, you know, what it is called. Then to then say there's a vaccine, that I think you do owe the people of Gauteng and the rest of the people that had to say that in an apology. But I want to also then get you to apologize for one thing. The people of Tshwane have been lied to and have been misled. You, during your State of the Province address, state that Tshwane doesn't owe Eskom anything. Okay, I want to put it to you that that is a complete lie. The people of Tshwane need to know that Tshwane still owes billions to Eskom. What is there was that from Rainwater there was an agreement in terms of how do we then ensure that there is first priority in terms of payment to make sure that then you're able to then catch up in terms of the payment and keep the payments then up to date going forward. But to then say that there is no debt, that it is debt-free, I think that is very much you know, a false statement that has been made. But I also want to then address two other issues with you, Mr. Premier. We can talk about the grand plans that we have. But if we're not going to address the basics, the grand plans fall by the wayside. The residents of Soweto cannot get into trains right now and move freely from Soweto to Johannesburg. The residents of Sebokeng cannot jump into trains right now and move freely and use cheap alternative means of transport except taxis and buses to move from their areas of residence to places of work. What are we doing about it? I heard you saying that we're going to be working around the plan to make sure that we, you know, we deal with it. But you're now talking about introducing a rail line that is going to be moving from Polokwane to Pretoria, and people are coming, having breakfast here and then having dinner in Polokwane. What are we saying about those that need to have transport that they need every morning to go to and from workspaces? That is what needs to be preoccupying our minds. That is what is going to get the economy of Gauteng moving and ticking in the right direction. These are things that should be occupying your mind. We need to then be dealing with the issues of crime and safety in our communities. Those are the basic things that we now need to be talking about. You speak about, you know, helicopters, and you talk about, you know, the kind of falling that has taken place. But fact of the matter is that our policemen don't have bullets. Fact of the matter is that policemen and women, this is not coming from me. We went and visited all the police stations, and these are things that the police are telling us. You are not taking care of the basics, or you're not helping them to take care of the basics. I know that when we visited police stations, and you made promises to some of the police stations that you are going to improve the conditions. I don't know when was the last time you ever visited Acacia again after the last visit that you made. And did you see that the conditions have actually then gotten worse? Have you ever visited some of the police stations in Ekurhuleni and see that you have a number of detectives that are limping, not because something happened to them when they went out there, but something happened to them when they were in their offices, because they're sitting in containers that are 20 years old and the floors have rotten, that when they walk, some of them have actually broken their feet while in their offices. Have you visited the police stations and see the amount of cases that the detectives are now sitting with? And you wonder why we're not making headway in terms of dealing with the issues of crime around Gauteng. I want to then say to you, until such time as you address the basics, all these other things that you raise, that become so nice and glorified, are not going to be able to then be realized. If you want to then ensure that the economy of Gauteng is moving forward, that there is confidence from the people of Gauteng that government is actually moving in the right space, there are solutions that we are offering. We are saying address the most basics. We are saying address the issue of infrastructure. We are saying that don't live in a parallel universe to that which the everyday person is living in. Don't come and tell stories to the people of Gauteng that, things are going the right way, while we know that things are going in the wrong way. You promised the people of Gauteng last year alone, you promised the people of Gauteng 820,000 jobs last year alone, and I can break it down in terms of the sectors that you said jobs are going to be coming out of. I would urge you and challenge you to then give 3 of the things that you said came, in terms of the jobs that you said specifically, and how many of those have actually then been implemented to date. And why are we continuing to bleed jobs while you had promised 820,000 jobs? This year you make a promise of 250,000 jobs. If you couldn't reach your target last year, how do we trust that you are going to then be able to then meet the target that you're setting for yourself this year? Premier, I can go on and on about the state of this province, but I think stop living in a parallel universe to the ones that everyday person is living in. Let us make sure that we address what is genuinely wrong, because that is the only way that we get to then, get onto the solutions that needs to be there. I'm asking you, I'm humbly pleading with you to work with everybody that is willing to come up with solutions, and to not come up and ridicule those that are coming up with solutions. Let's work together. Let us try and build a Gauteng that can actually then influence how South Africa gets to then get on a winning track again. I hope that, that is something that I can live with you. Whether the following statements then become insults or all of that, it's none of, our business. But the core business that we should be concerning ourselves with here today are the solutions that the people are willing to put on the table, things that you're willing to listen to. I'll leave it at that, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.